Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for Tremors 3 Back to Perfection. And yes, Perfection is Perfection Nevada, I believe. Yeah, Nevada. Is it? Yeah, I think it's Nevada. Sorry, so much confusion on this. Yeah, where everything started in the first Tremors. Now, this is the third one I've done. If you're just finding this and you want to know, what about Tremors and Tremors 2 Aftershocks? I did reviews for those. They're on the channel, and I also created a playlist for the channel for all the Tremors movies, because I think I'm going for all 6. So once I'm done with this, we're at the halfway point. We're going to keep going. Now, is this a situation you may be asking yourself of diminishing returns with the films? Unequivocally, yes. At least at this point. I feel like there is a possibility that when you get to like number 4, number 5, number 6, that one of those is going to buck the trend. It's not going to continually go down, I don't think. At some point, it's going to bump up a little bit. But at the moment, obviously, the first Tremors really good. The second Tremors, not a bad follow-up. The third Tremors here, we're going down further. Although, it was still enjoyable and still fun to a degree, but we'll go over that more. This one was directed by Brent Maddock, so if you haven't watched my other reviews, you know that S.S. Wilson and Brent Maddock are the ones that wrote the script for the original Tremors. Then S.S. Wilson directed the second Tremors, Tremors Aftershocks, because they were trying to get it as cheap as possible, and he basically volunteered to do it for free. Now, in the third film, Brent Maddock, the other writer of the original Tremors, is in the directing seat. Maddock and S.S. Wilson were still involved with the writing at this point, but they also brought in 2 other people, a Nancy Roberts, who also did some writing for the scripts for Tremors 4 and the Tremors TV show. Yes, if you didn't know, there was a Tremors TV show. And then John Whelpley, who did he's written a lot of episodes of TV shows over his lifespan. And then he also worked on scripts for Tremors 5 and Tremors 6, which we're not there yet. But we'll get there. We'll get there. So in this film, obviously, Michael Gross is back as Burt Gummer. Burt Gummer is the strongest character, as in staying power-wise, for these films. He's the only real returning character from Tremors 2, but they did bring back some characters from the first Tremors. Not Reba McEntire, not Kevin Bacon, but they brought back Charlotte Stewart, who plays Nancy, Tony Gennaro, who plays Miguel, Ariana Richards, who plays Mindy. Yes, the actual little girl who was in the first Tremors is grown up in Tremors 3. It is the same one. I made sure to check. And Robert Jane as Melvin also comes back. So this is one of those things where, like, the nostalgia is fun. The nostalgia is actually kind of cool with the film, because once they start the film, which I'm going to give some more backstory, but I just need to say this right now. When they start the film, it gives you this feeling of, this feels comfortable. This feels fun. Like, it's cool to check back in with these people after the events of 2, and you're kind of like, oh, I missed the town in the first Tremors. Well, you know what? You're right back there, and you're going to see what else goes on. And it's also cool to see, you know, with Bert back there, what are the changes that Bert has gone through. Mainly the changes with his house/compound at this point, but we'll talk about that a little more. This got a $6 million budget, which is a $2 million bump from the second one. And it was also direct-to-video. I think they're all direct-to-video after the first one, to be honest. But I haven't done the research for all the other ones after this, so we'll find out. This film marked the first time that Graboids were done in CG. Prior to that, in the first one and second one, it was practical effects for the Graboids. In the second one, they did practical effects for the Shriekers, but also some CG for the Shriekers when they were moving. Now, in this one, they actually did CG for the Graboids. Not all of them, but there was some practical effects for the Graboids, but movement-wise, it was mainly CG. And then they did CG for... they didn't really have Shriekers in this. The Assblasters, as they called them in the movie, oddly enough, they did CG for that. Which, by the way, the CG for the Assblasters, when they're on the ground and further away, it doesn't look that bad. But when they're flying, it's not looking good. Or when you get too close up, it's not looking good. And this is one of my things is always go for practical no matter what. Even if it's not going to look the best, because CG in about 10 years is going to look terrible no matter what. Because it just keeps getting better. Now, here's a really strange thing about this film. This was rated PG. Yes, I had to double and triple check that one. It is rated PG, which I don't understand how that's rated PG. The first two are rated PG-13, and they have a lot of the same amount of violence and language and splatter. So how did they get a PG for this one? I just don't get it. If you know the answer to that, put a comment down here. Okay, so it seems like Burt has really come into his own when you start this film out. I mean, he's the big guy on campus, if you will. Everyone knows him. He's a celebrity. He's still capitalizing on the whole Graboid and Shrieker thing. He's dealing with these Shriekers like it's no big deal. You know, obviously in the beginning, he's got that big gun going and just like shooting. Because, as we know, Burt Gummer loves guns. It's like his pornography, pretty much. But when that was going on, it just felt to me like, you know what? He's doing this like it's so unbelievably routine that it gives me the same feeling that I got from the first one and from the second one. Well, mainly from the second one, actually, where they kind of settle into a groove. You know, Earl in that one really settled into a groove of, I know Graboids, this is how you deal with them. And then that's when the Shriekers show up. So it's the same situation in this film where Bert's dealing with the Shriekers and he's like, oh, I know this. I know how to deal with Graboids. I know how to deal with Shriekers. No big deal. Just do my thing. And then the Assblasters show up. So it's kind of the same formula. They're doing a lot of the same stuff as the second film. And that's fine with me, to be honest, because with films like this, I don't want them to just do the same thing with the same creatures. You got to add something. And with this one, it's a good way to have the same, but have something new at the same time. So the whole idea of the metamorphosis, basically, of the Graboid going, it's the Graboid stage, and then it ends up going to the Shrieker stage, and then it ends up going to the Assblaster stage, and then there's an egg from the Assblaster that goes back to the Graboid stage. It's cool because in this third movie, you have now completed your understanding of the entire life cycle of the Graboid that we started with in the first film. So it all comes full circle, and is why it then makes sense that for the fourth film that I will be reviewing, they go to a prequel to the first Tremors. So it's kind of like, oh, we already told the story. Now let's go back, now that you know everything biologically about these Graboids, and show you how Graboids started with a city, with the same city. I think it's called something different. But we'll get to that when we do that review. So, I feel like Bert's just doing this for fun at this point in the movie. Maybe just to get access to bigger weapons, to be honest. That's kind of how it feels to me, is, you know, that's how he gets his rocks off. You know, that's how he's happy. That's how he's excited in life. Because obviously you saw he was down in the second movie because his wife Heather left him. And then what reinvigorated him? What made him feel alive again? Blasting Shriekers. But now he gets to blast Graboid, Shriekers, and Assblasters. And he does it. He does it quite well. There's a part in the beginning of this when they go to the town and they see the old general store that was Walter Wong, I think his name was, and his daughter's running it. And on the side of it, there's a sign that says "Coldest beer in town," which I think is kind of a funny visual cue, because that's probably the only place you could get beer in town, because there's like nothing to the town, obviously. So I just think it's funny that it says "Coldest beer in town," because duh, it's the only beer in town, basically. I like the pop culture Graboid and Shrieker things that they have in this film, especially like the theme park that was created, but also the comic books of the Graboids and the Shriekers, because it gives this cool idea that these creatures have permeated pop culture. Like, they're very well known by everyone, so much so that we're now doing comic books about them. And it's funny because they refer back to the comic books numerous times in this film as references for information on the creatures, which, you know, I'm not saying that's a plot hole or anything. I'm just saying it's kind of funny because it gives you the idea that the people who made the comic books were being true to life and actually getting all the biology correct about how these creatures are. And this seems like a funny thing to be, you know, tied to a comic book. But I like that about it. I think it's kind of cool. And then it's also focusing so much on the commercialization of this creature, which, you know, we have a tendency to commercialize a lot of these types of things. I mean, think about Sasquatch / Bigfoot, you know. or whatever, Yeti, Abominable Snowman, you know, all these different iterations of creatures like that, they have been commercialized. We have all this stuff that people sell that has to do with them. It's the same thing. The guy making the fake Graboid indicators is a really good, nice comedic moment. What I'm talking about is the guy like making all the noise and throwing, you know, shooting the sand up in the air when Jack is running his, you know, fake Graboid safari. That guy's pretty funny. Obviously, as soon as you meet him, you just know if anyone's going to get it in this film, it's that guy. And I believe he ends up being the first one to get it, which makes, you know, perfect sense. He just gets swallowed straight up. So this guy, Jack, on the topic of him, he seems a lot like Earl and Val in the first movie because he never had good plans. He literally says in this, you know, because in the first film they focus on the fact that Earl and Val always are trying to come up with plans to like do better, make more money, get out of town. And they never could until the very end. Now, Jack is a very similar person, but he just doesn't make plans. He just thinks, I'm just going to fly by the seat of my pants. I don't make plans. But then by the end of the film, he's actually making plans, and they're good plans. So it's very much similar to the first movie for that reason. The kid being corrected and calling the Graboid a tremor earlier in this film seems like a nod to people in the real world actually calling the creatures tremors because of the name of the first film. There are so many times where I'm talking to people about tremors and they refer to the creatures as tremors. They're not tremors. The name of tremors has to do with the seismic activity that indicates that the Graboids are coming. They are Graboids. So I think that this moment in Tremors 3 is that indicator that this is what happens in real life. This is our nod to it. We know people are just calling them tremors out in the real world, but they're Graboids. So by correcting this person in the film, it's kind of them venting their frustration of, it's not tremors, it's Graboids, people. Get it right. You mock the Graboids enough, they're going to show up and make you pay for it. And that's kind of what happens with the town. A lot of people, especially Jack and his buddy, they're really kind of mocking the Graboids. And then also, you know, to a degree, Bert treating everything as just kind of business as usual. And he's dominated the Graboids. They're going to show up and they're going to show you what's what. And they do, obviously. You can tell the Graboid mouth monsters are crew members' arms. The little extra creatures that come out of the Graboid mouths and are, you know, trying to bite people that kind of look like snake worm things. More than ever in this film, you can tell it's some dude's arm in like this latex puppet, like going like this, just sticking out of the sand. It's really funny. It's comedic. And yeah, I mean, it's just something you notice. You can't get away from that. According to what Bert's saying, the Graboids are migrating because it's the same path as before, which this is interesting because it's then adding to the story of the Graboids in general that they migrate a certain direction. They have like an actual pattern where seasonally they'll be here and then they're moving here. And I just thought it was another additional thing. And that's the thing that they do with these scripts for the Tremors is it seems they keep making sure that they add something else scientifically revealed about these creatures, which is what I like. You're always learning more about the creatures as the films happen. So I'll be interested to see if they continue with that with the films. I was really caught off guard when the government shows up in this film, and it's like, Graboids are protected creatures? I guess they kind of say it's because they're the most ancient creature found on land, or in this instance, underland. So that becomes a place where, you know, they're protected. Then they can't be killed. Now, obviously, that shows up and works well for the end of the film where Bert is able to tell Melvin, "You're not building houses here. You're not selling land because guess what? I think he calls him El Blanco, the giant white Graboid, who may be kind of a good guy, I don't know, is on the premises." So he points to that and says, "Hey, guess what? The government protects these guys. Therefore, this is protected land. Therefore, you can't build here. Therefore, take off. Go screw." So, yeah. And once again, sticking it to Melvin like they love to do in the first film all the time. So as long as it took for Jack to get Bert out of the Graboid, he'd be dead. It's a funny scene, though. That whole scene where Bert gets swallowed up by the Graboid and he still has a walkie-talkie, so Jack's gonna, you know, drive after him, and he was driving him to Bert's compound because he had put that new reinforced concrete wall underground. So he runs into it and basically dies, and then Jack's able to shovel him out and then cut open the Graboid and pull him out, and he's still alive. The amount of time that passes, though, he would be dead. No one can hold their breath that freaking long. He would be dead. So that's a plot hole with the film. But, you know, it was also a fun scene at the same time, so take these things with a grain of salt. The acting by the doctor who initially tells of the Shriekers showing up is terrible. That actor is garbage. My wife even said it was hard to follow what he was even trying to say because his acting was so awful and the pacing of his lines was so bad. I like how they keep referring back to the Graboid comics for information. I said this before, but it bears reiterating because I think that is awesome. Plus, the artwork on the Graboid and Shrieker comics were cool. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they had one called Graboid versus Shrieker or something like that. I would read that. And that's actually a good premise for a film. They should do that. Unless it's already happened in one of the ones I'm going to see. I was waiting for something new with the creatures to come up. Just as I suspected, they moved to flight now, but with explosive farts, apparently. I did see it coming that they would then move to the next portion of the life cycle being flying. I did see that coming. I did suspect that, because if you think underground, on top of ground, where do you go from there? In the air. Where do you go from there? Possibly underwater. I don't know. Are they going to come through the sewers, shrink down and do that? I don't know. We'll find out. But the explosive farts, which is where they get the name Assblaster, I certainly did not see that coming. And then the fact that they use that in it and call it out and say they're farting and use it to their advantage is, you know, it's funny. It's comedy. And that's one of the things about this film and all of the Tremors films is they're very cognizant of what they're doing. They're very comedy driven, and I appreciate that. The new phase of creature going into a coma from eating too much is interesting because the first two phases happen to be all about eating. So that kind of lets you know that the food coma in the third stage indicates that's the last stage because they no longer need to keep eating in order to grow or procreate or whatever. They're just, you know, a vessel to, you know, grow the egg on the inside and then start a new Graboid, basically. Yeah, like I talked about before, the CG not looking so hot in this film, especially when the creatures are flying. Painful at that point. The land boating scene actually looked really fun, where Jack tells him to jump in the boat, and they're just like riding this boat with the tarp over it in the desert. It looked to be so much fun that I would want to do that. Like, I literally was watching this and was like, I would like to do that. That looks awesome. How do I do this? Sign me up. I guess I need to know Burt Gummer or Jack. Jack goes from being a fraud who never makes plans to being a hero who legitimately has good plans. So I saw this coming. You know, that's kind of what they do with the characters like that. Since he was in like the Earl and or the Val role, I figured he's going to turn around at the end. He's not going to be a scumbag this whole time, just trying to make a buck and, you know, hoodwink people. So sure enough, that's what happened. The potato gun idea in this was cool. That was a lot of fun. I like how they then took that potato gun idea and made it to, like, we can shoot these giant, like, basically flaming arrows at them and then pierce their, I don't know what you're calling, gas sacks, I guess is what you would call it. So they then explode. And then the actual explosion when they would do that, obviously a lot of fun. Because seeing that orange viscera and goo flying all over the place is always the best part of the Tremors movies, in my opinion. It's surprising how long they draw out the Junkyard scene. It's solid action, but it feels like they would have moved on sooner. They do kind of like keep it moving through that, but at the same time, I did start to feel like, okay, I need a little bit of a change of scenery. They definitely kind of like stretched that one out. I was surprised by that. What's the deal with the white Graboid? Is it just dumb luck? Because at the end, like, they're in trouble. They have another Assblaster coming at him. He's on the ground, and then all of a sudden, El Blanco, the white Graboid, pops up out of the ground and eats the thing and then goes away. So is this guy a good guy? Or are we supposed to think that that was just dumb luck? That he was coming because there was noise and vibration and he could sense it, and he just happened to eat the Assblaster and not get them? I don't know. Put some comments down here. The Assblaster attraction at the end of this is funny, where they're kind of like selling tickets for people to see one in a cage. I thought that was pretty funny. Plus a good idea for the town. And then, yeah, I guess at the end, the idea is to coexist with El Blanco. I mean, it is, because Bert, says to Melvin, you can't build here or sell land here because this is here and it's protected. So I guess El Blanco's not that violent. What's it going to eat? I don't get it. Like, I would think at least it's going to go for people's livestock. So I don't know. But maybe that'll be addressed in number 5. And obviously I'm saying that because number 4 is going backwards in time. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll get there. The dialogue in this film actually took a step backwards. The lines between characters were not nearly as well written or fun or funny. And that's one of the other things, is the comedy in Tremors 1 and Tremors 2 is a lot better. The dialogue is better written in those as well. And just script-wise overall is better. It's still solid-ish. But, it's like I said in the beginning, we're getting diminishing returns. That's usually what happens with sequels, so. This was during the period of movies really making jokes of how dumb and wasteful the government is, and I think this movie kind of also goes down that road where they're kind of like, why is the government showing up and telling us we can't kill these creatures that are dangerous and are trying to kill us? We've been living here, they just showed up, yet they're saying, you gotta move, basically, because these things are protected. This in particular makes a point that blanket government rules don't necessarily work for all towns, and in this instance, the townsfolk know what's better for them, because obviously, as you see in the film, the government shows up out of nowhere. They don't really know that much about the creatures even, definitely don't know much about the town, and they're trying to tell these people how they're supposed to operate, how they're supposed to live. Even worse, telling them, you got to get out of here because we've decided you can't stay here because these things are here. And they're probably thinking, okay, these things were here before, we're the ones who discovered them, we let you know about them, and we had to fight them and kill them then. We're just going to keep doing that. And that's what ends up happening. But then they turn it around in the end, and they use that kind of government government law to save their town in a way. So it's kind of funny like that. So I had a hard time coming up with my overall rating on this one. So out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I was between 2 and 2.5. So I went with the 2. It felt more 2 than 2.5, but if I was doing quarters, I would do 2.25, so just know that. But anyway, put your comments down here about Tremors 3, let's talk about it, and know that Tremors 4 is coming, and Tremors 5 and Tremors 6, and we'll do it. But real quick, do me a quick favor, hit that subscribe button if you like any videos I do, not just this one, but any of them, because it literally takes you a second. That's your way to pay me back, because I'm just giving everyone free content here. So, and I like doing it, but I need to stay encouraged. So when I get the subscribers, it keeps me encouraged. Also, if you've already subscribed, make sure you hit that thumbs up to let me know you're still watching. And the other thing is, if you're going to subscribe, hit that notification bell. Then you know anytime I'm putting up new review videos, unboxing videos, or other things I decide to randomly do. And also when I do a live stream, that's the most important one. Because if you forget, then you'll get that email saying, hey, Carlin's streaming. Check it out. But anyway, thanks for checking this out. And until next time, keep it brutal.